And David French says this, that the seeds of political violence are being sown in churches. Now, while it's easy to see that this was merely an attempt to try to stoke outrage and to get attention for somebody who's desperate for it, this is a notion that I've actually heard a lot, that Christian nationalism is the threat to Christianity today, more so than the cult of progressive identity politics on the left. And so when we look at these kind of stories, I think it's important that we see if there's any merit to the claim so that we can really address them, and then we can really see where the real threat may be. So let's jump into this story in the Dispatch by David French. On Thursday night in Castle Rock, Colorado, a group called FEC United held a town hall meeting that featured a potpourri of GOP candidates and election conspiracy theorists. Most notably, the event included John Eastman, the Claremont scholar who authored the notorious legal memos that purported to justify the decertification and reversal of the 2020 election results. During the meeting, a man named Sean Smith accused Colorado Secretary of State Jenna Griswold of election misconduct. "You know, if you're involved in election fraud, then you deserve to hang," he said. "Sometimes the old ways are the best ways." "I was accused of endorsing violence," he went on. "I'm not endorsing violence. I'm saying once you put your hand on a hot stove, you get burned." As soon as he said, "You deserve to hang," an audience member shouted, "Yeah!" and applause filled the room. The moment, almost entirely ignored by the national media, is worth noting on its own terms, but perhaps the most ominous aspect of the evening was its location, a church called The Rock. If you think it's remotely unusual that a truly extremist event was held at a church, then you're not familiar with far-right road shows that are stoking extremism in church after church at event after event. David French here wants you to believe that on a regular basis, on Sunday mornings or whenever people are going to church, that right-wing extremism is what we're actually talking about, because you and I both know that you're all familiar with walking into a church and seeing a portrait of Jesus with a MAGA hat on, because that is the iconography of the Christian right today. Now, if this wasn't ridiculous enough, it also comes in the context of the left, who actually wishes to mainstream kooks, not the right. I mean, go to the vast majority of Christian universities and you will find feminist apologetics or critical race theory posing as social justice biblical virtues. And you can see all of this on the accounts of even professors in the mainstream who are quote unquote reformed or Christians, but also feminists, as though those two things really go together well. No, the truth is that the people who are really mainstreaming radical ideology are those on the left, not those on the right. And far rarer is it that this kind of extremism actually shows up in churches. Now, I don't know The Rock, and I know The Rock, Dwayne Johnson, but I don't know, and we're friends, by the way, but I don't know The Rock, the church, The Rock. But if I were to guess, I would suspect that this is probably a relatively small congregation and David French wants to try to make a story out of nothing. When we look at a radical identity politician and a radical abortionist in Joe Biden, it's clear that the Christian on the right has a much clearer road to saying something like that than the person on the left. So nonetheless, this kind of mainstreaming nonsense is happening on one party way more than the other, with endless conversations about racial healing in America and how that needs to come from the church. Yeah, by the way, it always has, and nothing has changed. There is no such thing as civil rights in the West without American Christianity, quite frankly, and without Christianity writ large, even in England. So to suggest that now there needs to be racial healing because of how racist the church is just absolutely insane. And this is being played today in our culture by just professing that there is even this large demographic called the Christian nationalist right. They don't exist. Now, I can't really prove that to you, but all I can say to you is just go into any church on any given Sunday in America and see how hard it is to find, which David French certainly isn't willing to do because he's too busy writing this nonsense while people are at church, even though he's supposedly a Christian and supposedly a conservative. But more importantly, what I can show you is where the kooks really hang out. So here is a trailer from a movie called Everything is All White.
me most about white people is when they pretend like they're the victim. What's also annoying is when they kill us.
You know what's also annoying? People who act like they know what they're talking about, but are actually imbeciles. The real numbers here suggest something far different. You know who's really killing black people on a much, much, much larger number? Other black people. Now, this is the same thing in white communities. White people kill other white people more than any other racial demographic. But it's funny that they never wish to talk about this. But suffice to say, I just want to go ahead and clear my name just so that I can show allegiance and alliance with those of you on the left. I identify as white, and to date, I have never killed a black person. So we are not killing us, at least not all of us. That's other white people. It's not me. I'm an ally, like I said. But let's keep on going because there's more great gems of wisdom in this trailer.
We're storming the Capitol! You're not patriots. You're ridiculous.
Smartest thing that's in that whole trailer, by the way. Everybody agrees with this. The people at the Capitol were not patriots. They are ridiculous and evil. But there's more.
One of the definitions of American whiteness is ignorance.
I just don't understand what you say to that, by the way. One of the definitions of American whiteness is ignorance. I don't know what you say to that. Perhaps one of the definitions for the social justice left and the anti-racist left is insanity?
White Jesus or black Jesus?
Jesus was not white. Think of geography.
Okay, and that takes us to the real point here. Do you know the number of people who actually believe that Jesus had blonde hair and blue eyes? You can probably count it on one hand, because this is how many Christian evangelicals actually believe that Jesus looked like me or had white skin and blue eyes. He, by the way, wasn't black either. He was Jewish, and so he probably had kind of a light brown tone skin, brown eyes, and brown hair. He might have looked something like the guy on The Chosen, or maybe even like Jim Caviezel, even though he was a white man. But he definitely wasn't black, but he definitely wasn't European. You know who knows this? Absolutely everybody. The reason they wish to suggest something like this is because they're building a straw man so that they can fight against nothing. If you make something sound incredibly ridiculous, well, then of course you want to fight against it. And of course people won't look to see that what you're actually talking about is nonsensical, if not an out-and-out lie at the very least. I think it's important to state this stuff because there are so many people who repeat this lie. How many people go around suggesting that George Washington was Nigerian? None. In the same way that nobody suggests that Jesus was white. But this goes back to our David French article because nobody is suggesting that, for example, if you stormed the Capitol on January 6th, that you were a good Christian. And by the way, the only person who is suggesting that it was a bunch of Christians that were doing that is David French. Because who has ever heard this nonsense? Who actually believes that these people, now they might have been professing Christians at the end of the day, but there is no study, no numbers, no actual justification for the claim that January 6th was an act perpetuated by Christian nationalists. But he doesn't stop David French from lying about it and telling everybody that in his article. It says this: when it comes to Christian nationalism, the bar for concern has been passed by any conceivable measure. When a movement is strong enough to storm the Capitol, then it is worth continued monitoring and continued concern. Now that's just an audacious statement to suggest that Christian nationalism is what is behind the storming of the Capitol on January 6th. There's just no evidence for that. So not only is he straw manning, he's doing what is called nut picking, which means he's picking out a couple of rare, few exceptions to the rule and then trying to make it the rule. Now, all my contention is just simply this. If you really want to go nut picking, I guarantee you, the left is way, way, way more chock full of nuts than any other segment of society today, right now, especially in America. So here's the real question. Should you condemn the Christian nationalism that is racist, isolationist to an extreme, and even anti-biblical? Yes. But here's the real question. French, for you and other people like you? Are you willing to condemn the left for their equally nonsensical identity politics, Marxist overt notions, and anti-biblical ideology? That's the real question. But of course, the answer to that is probably no, because as long as he's got a boogeyman, he can avoid the truth.
You can catch brand new episodes of Indie Thinker with Reed Huberman every Monday and weekly bonus episodes to keep you thinking throughout the week. But you have to subscribe and click the bell to be notified when new episodes drop. If you enjoy this content, make sure to like this video and share it with friends.